Hello. Good. Should we start? Okay. So we'll be talking about frequent releases and how to take your software to production faster. Like that's basically the essence, the theme of what we'll be talking about. And let's wait for Jake to be audible.
Hello. Yep.
Yeah, we are notorious for being loud, so
I should be a bit slower. Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at the continuous delivery book, and let's say a bunch of case studies from Amazon or Flickr, or a lot of people who have done continuous delivery really well, the build test release workflow invariably ends up looking something like this. We are not saying this is not prescriptive, but it ends up looking something like this. There are a bunch of build activities, there are different components, then there are various kinds of tests that are going on in different test environments. There might be a staging environment, there might be production, then there is production, right?
This might look a bit too elaborate. You have all those testing stages, etc., etc. Looks like a big diagram, but even your usual case where you have a simple workflow typically falls into this section where you have something to do with the building, and then there is the test and release component. So broadly, it all falls into these two. And then there are a lot of these activities or these or these best practices that help you make this whole thing go faster and faster.
Right, the ubiquitous continuous delivery, right? And then there are so many different concepts. You have one-click deployment, you have configuration management, you have blue-green deployments, acceptance test-driven development. There are so many different activities that allegedly or that apparently help you go faster, right? So everybody talks about so many different of these practices. And then you have tools. I mean, there's literally not enough space on even 3 slides where we can put all the tools that are used these days. I'm sure you guys know all of these and a lot more of tools that help you go faster. So yeah, these are some that we could think of. But then, if you see the first 3 slides that we just showed you, it's filled with buzzwords, right? Literally every single thing that we had there is potentially a buzzword.
And there's a lot of it there.
There are lots of it, right? This entire space is filled with that. So what we want to talk about today is how to take your release cycles faster, make your release cycles go faster, basically frequent releases, but sans buzzwords. Yeah, so my name is Pavan Sudarshan.
And I'm Anandha Krishnan.
Jake.
And we're working at Maven Hive.
Yeah, so this is what we'll be talking about. Okay, so some of the assumptions we have made while working on this talk. I'll probably quickly ask some questions. So how many of you today are working on software which is in production? It is being used by real people. Okay, cool, pretty much everyone. How many of you have been a part of the team on the ground involved to take software into production?
Okay, great.
That's great, right? So,
and how often do you release this software in production?
I would be scared if there were people who are not writing code but not involved in taking it to prod, but yeah.
We are in DevOps.
It's in DevOps kind of days, but yeah.
So, how often do you push this code to production? Show of hands, once a month
or more.
Once a week. Daily. Okay, fine. You all want to do daily. Yeah, great.
How many daily?
You want to, but how many of you are actually doing it?
Okay. How much was week or less? Okay.
About the same.
Yeah, how many more than let's say 2 months once? More than 2 months? Okay. Cool. Okay, so actually the predominant looks like it's daily and a week. Yep. So in that case, what we thought was this might still be a good discussion where we'll share what worked for us, and we would be very, very interested if that didn't work for you guys. So that would be very interesting conversation to have.
And we're going to talk a lot about how we did it, and you can probably compare notes with that, and then see if that worked for you. If you have more to add, so hopefully there'll be a lot of questions and back and forth. So yeah, that's
some of the assumptions that we made. Like this would be useful for these kind of audience.
Yeah. Again, and getting to that point of what is in it for you there, I'm sure based on the title, it looks very much like we're going to talk about how we do it, how we go, or how we went, or how typically you can go about going from a 4 months to a 1 day. But before that, we want to stop and talk about the why and the why nots. Because I think the most important aspect that we're trying to drive out here by saying no buzzwords, none of that. Let's talk about why do we even need to do it, right? And then the more important question, the why not, and then the how frequently. And of course, we have enough time to discuss about the how, so we will get to that.
In our heads, it's more like if we directly talk about how, we'll be talking about buzzwords. We will be talking about the tools and the frameworks that are involved. So rather than just diving into that, we wanted to take a step back and say, okay, fine. Let's actually understand why are we even doing all this, and then if there's a consensus, then we'll move on to the how.
It really makes it simpler once you know why you're doing it, because it distills down to something, and then you just have to focus on that bit of the how, and not the entire gamut of buzzwords and the tools and so on. So let's get started.
Finally, usually speakers talk, and then Q&A is at the end, and it's taken offline because there's pretty much no time, right? Instead, if Q&A is good, let's do it frequently, right? I mean, we are talking frequent everything. So interrupt us any point at time, and talk. Especially because there's a lot of aligned audience here. So it would be great if you can stop and say you guys are wrong and you suck, which is brilliant. That will only make our content better for the next talk. So
so whenever you have a question, please just go for it. Let's get started. What's wrong with these buzzwords? It's not like we have anything against buzzwords themselves. There's this tendency when you hear about these fancy words, or you read about them. There's this tendency that they sound very important. Of course they are, and you are like, okay, then you get down to the details of it, and then that carries you away. Often you find these tools and gems. You want to read about them. You go into the wiki. You start seeing all these options. Oh, it's great. I mean, it's very, very tempting to start feeling that you need that as well. Let me get down to it and start thinking about how do I go about doing it, rather than the why.
I mean, if you hear the phrase infrastructure as code, I mean, anybody would like it, right? Oh my god, infrastructure as code, oh, you totally want that, right? I'll spend the next 3 months on my project trying to do that. It's very tempting, right? So, but in our experience, what ends up happening is these buzzwords. I mean, we are overusing that word. But anyway, these concepts, what they end up doing is they talk about solutions. Right? But not as much about problems. And
quite elaborately.
Exactly, as Jay keeps saying, these tools, right? They try to solve a lot of different problems so that they can cater to a wider audience, right? Open source projects typically end up doing that, where they do a lot of different things. But then, do you need all of them? Right? Typically what that in turn ends up doing is when you use these things, you never end up being just enough. You do a lot, right? How many of you use Chef or Puppet today? Right? Do you think you are using it just enough? I mean, do you have tasks which are there because a new feature in Chef got introduced and you want to use it? Or do you know for a fact that you totally have that problem and this is perfectly what I need and that's the only reason I'm going to do it? Right? I mean, it's very hard to draw that line. You look at the release notes of a new release of Chef, you think, oh my god, this is totally what I need. I need this on my team, right? This is very important. It looks like a critical thing, right? Once you get attached to some of these things, that is what drives your decisions. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today, where we are saying, okay, let's decouple that and let's start looking at the problems. Right? So let's stop looking at the solutions for a moment and start looking at the problems that are there in the space of going fast. Frequent releases.
We started with frequent releases. So let's go with the why. Why should we even do it? Why do you guys think we should do it?
Yeah, you guys are doing it, right? So why are you doing it?
Why are you doing it?
Multiple times a day, once a week.
for the business needed.
Okay.
That's from an e-commerce thing. So every time there needs to be a change in the website, we have to deploy.
Great. That sounds.
Maybe we have a feedback.
Cool. Yep. That's very good. That's very good.
Yeah. Anything else? Some people in the back also lifted their hands for daily users.
Some bug that
And yeah.
I mean, when we did this talk before, like a lot of people they said fast feedback, right? I mean, yes, at least in DevOps days we all know that it is for fast feedback. So let's be more articulate about it, right? So yeah.
Anything frequent has a connotation with the whole feedback being fast.
it's all about the release plan. Like all these, like whatever fixture that we are doing, we have to come up planning on like everyday releases that we are doing. So all of them cannot go in one chunk. So what we did, we every day we tried, we already tested those code, and then test on stage, then we are going to deploy in the production.
Sure.
This is the way we are doing for the production deploy every day. We are achieving that.
Sure. I mean, you said you plan, you break it down, you plan, you test it on staging, and then you push it.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I mean, we can just stop now. I mean, yes, yeah, sure. Like that's exactly, like that's the theme of what we are going to talk about. So yeah, let's take a step back. I mean,
start looking at it a little more deeper, and then exactly your answer. It's because, or at least we hope it's always because your customer wants it. Your customer wants those features. It's like it's being pulled out of you. Like get me that.
I mean,
new,
like to add to
feature,
the e-commerce thing, right? You may want to change on the website because you think the customer needs it, or your stakeholders think that their customers need that. Like there is always a drive to understand what is required, and that's why you keep churning out, right? So eventually it all boils down to like figuring out what is actually required, rather than assumptions. Like you start deploying things, and so that you understand what is really required.
And at any point, if you feel that that pull is not that strong enough, then there are some more reasons to think about. One of that is this, which is always develop using sign-off inventory.
So like this keeps happening. Like this is like a deja vu. I mean, like a very simple, oversimplified example of this phenomena is let's say you have some data, you want to show it on the UI, right? Let's say you decide to build a table to show that. And then you say, okay, a table needs to have sortable columns, obviously, right? So you add sortable columns. Then say, okay, you will introduce a filtering mechanism where you filter the content of the table. And then you deploy this, customer sees it and says, oh wait, I don't need a table for this, table is not the right thing, right? But then you ended up spending the last 1 week trying to build this functionality, right? What would have been better was if you had built the table, deployed it to prod, the customer saw, oh okay, this is exactly what I need, or no, this is not what I need, and then try to build the auxiliary functionality of making it more usable would have been a better approach, right? That way you would have gone to production faster, and you would have built off of signed off inventory, where you know for a fact that table is what is required. Now let me add more value to the table. Right? It sounds very silly, this example, but if you look at your projects and products and think about your own experience, this is invariably what ends up happening, where you build a lot of things, you pile up a lot of inventory which is not signed off, and a lot of it is not required. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons why we would want to go faster.
And that exact example he said, it's actually a true story. I mean, it happened to us, and it keeps happening often, even now. Okay, yeah, so that thing almost chimes along with it. Integration is no longer an event. I'm sure you kind of know what I'm talking about. Integration, you're working off of this branch from your master, which has been running for a while now. A few people have added features to it, and then this is a time to push it back into production. You want to merge it back. You realize that you have to test not just your feature. You have to make sure you test your feature in the presence of those other features that have been just added. The longer you keep away from what is out in production, the harder it gets to get back. Because every time you add something to that particular line of branch, let's call it, we are all familiar with Git and the branching techniques that we use. You make it more and more complex to get back, because that increases your testing effort and the whole cycle along with it. Think of a case where you're just working off of master, right? You just make this one small change. I'm saying one small change. I mean even the biggest feature broken down into smaller chunks. and then it's just this one commit, you made one small change, you check it back in, that's the only thing you have to test. And you're almost sure that it's going to work in production, but because that's exactly where you've built it, right? So then that's when this integration becomes no longer an event. It just keeps happening all the time. You don't talk about it. There is no cost associated.
As in, the point here is to make integration a non-event, you have to release faster. By releasing faster, the only way to solve that problem is not having long-lived feature branches. I mean, you can have it, but it's a pain in the neck.
Think of a case, no branches.
I know where your neck lies
now. Finally, we also, customers might actually enjoy the constant updates, right? A small bug fix here, a new feature there. But I mean, we actually think that's the last thing. I mean, like sometimes customers may enjoy it, sometimes they may not. If they do, it's a good added advantage.
Experiences vary, initially they're not ready for these changes, but then once they start getting it, it's pretty cool. I mean, they get feedback. Usually I'm talking about stakeholders when I'm saying customers. But yeah, end users usually like it that things get fixed quickly.
Unless otherwise it does not break anything existing.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, so we'll talk about that in some time. Where it need not be read or
What's the definition of breaking? And
I mean, there are acceptable breakages is what we are trying to go towards. Okay. When would you not actively invest in engineering frequent releases? I'm saying engineering because you can always just change something on prod and that's a production deployment. But let's not think of that. But when would you not go fast?
It really helps us understand the why and play the devil's advocate for a while. Think about why.
Why would you not do it? Okay.
We don't have enough
Automation.
Okay.
automation for testing to be able to.
Okay. You're not able to do it because you don't have the infrastructure supporting the.
Of code that takes time.
Sure. You don't have.
But then it's more like a constraint that is preventing you from going forward. That's there. But we are saying, when would you consciously not do it? Where you say, okay, at this point, I will not try to go fast. As in, I will not try to invest in automation. I will not try to invest in tools or practices to go fast. I mean, it helps us, right, to understand when would you not do it.
Sometimes let's say you spend some money to develop your website.
Okay.
And you want X number of customers to sign up or see this amount of revenue before I start investing again on.
Sure. So your idea is not validated yet.
Budget
Perfect.
restraints.
Sorry?
Budget.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
That's usually the thing. And more to add to your point, you don't have the infrastructure, you're not ready to spend on it, maybe.
Maybe. Right.
Or,
Yeah.
That's really the question.
But for us, the number one reason is, does anyone care? Like today, let's say your team is going at 4 months, a production release once every 4 months. Your customers are fine. They are giving you money. Your team is fine. Nobody is hurt. Do we need to do it? If everything is smooth, why do you want to touch a stable system? Why do you want to rewrite something that works?
Hopefully there is a pressing problem there. Hopefully it's not because we are talking about it here or it's cool.
I mean, the assumption is that if you're not going fast, there is somebody who is getting hurt, but that has to be a conscious thing. By answering this question, and if the answer is yes, there is someone who cares, only then you will invest. But when you have to really try to search for who cares, then probably you don't need to solve this problem. There are many other problems to solve, right?
A lot more,
yeah. Pamu said, customers, they don't know what will work for them yet, right? This is think of yourself as a startup. You have an idea, you have a small angel funding, and you want to validate your idea. Would you be investing in trying to come up with a continuous delivery automation whatever thingy? Probably not, right? That's why we said, when I started talking about it, I was talking about engineering a proper solution, because at this point, you would obviously want to go fast. You would obviously want to go and change something on prod if required, when you are still trying to validate ideas and still trying to acquire customers and still trying to hit traction. right? At that point, you will probably not worry about any of these practices. Just do whatever makes sense and keep going on.
You probably even still want a frequent release, but the question again comes down to automation that has to be done in order to
at
achieve
that point, probably the assumption is your customers are okay with a few bugs, right? They're okay with some downtime because it's still the early stage startup kind of a thing, right? So that's where it's probably okay.
So we had something like this on a project we were working on in our company. Initially it was a small project when we felt that it's okay, we can delay the continuous delivery. But it so happens that once it's delayed, it just keeps on delaying.
Can we
It came to a point where after a year, when the client wanted to close down the project, he wanted to deploy. After a year into production, after a year into development, when everything is stable, when the devs are in that state where they feel that, whatever manually I want to keep in the machine, I can do it. Then if you try to put in automation, it becomes very difficult because then you have to change the code also.
Sure. Can we answer that in 2 minutes?
That's exactly the point we're coming to. So of course, we already spoke about the automation being pricey,
like budget issues and everything, right?
The automation is very simple. It's the first 60% is usually easy because you're using familiar tools. Stuff is already done.
XUnit, Cucumber, some Selenium here, some simple chef there. We'll get you some
quick up and running, so to say, and then you push to 90%. That's where you're now consciously doing it, putting in more effort. At that point, 100 starts looking tempting, and then you want to get to 100, and the cost goes up. So you constantly keep an eye on that cost. That's it. Like automation is good as long as it's not expensive. As long as it's not coming at the expense of those other features that you have built with that.
Without taking names, some companies are very notorious for developers running a lot of things, right? In those companies, a lot of tech debt that get prioritized are things like, we need to hit this kind of automation, we need to do that kind of thing, we need to have this framework up and running, right? But at what cost? They'll be probably coming at the cost of your features, right? I mean, this is where you have to feel, this is where you take a step back and say, no, I'm not doing this automation, no, I'm okay with just 1 week, no, I'm okay with just 1 month, or whatever it is that you want to hit, because at some point you have to draw a line. So this is when you would probably say, no, we are not doing this.
And just now you mentioned something very simple and very small. Of course, I'm going to talk about the case where you actually already think that, or that it is very simple and small, and it's just something that you have to do quickly and get done with. Maybe a prototype, maybe something like that, right? Not that it's in a lot of cases that's true. In fact, in the contradictory, it's almost like every project starts off looking small and simple, and then it starts growing, right?
I mean, you deliver something, customers realize, oh, I want this other thing, oh, I want this other thing, oh, I want this other thing.
It becomes successful and grows bigger.
Yeah, it becomes like if you deliver properly, customers trust you and they inherently give you more work. Right? What was a 2% team is now a 10% team and now a 50% team. And that's how typically, like if you look at any services projects, that's how they start, right? In that case, what do we do?
And now if you start thinking a little bit more harder about this, it's not really the why not, it's not the when, it's really the when not, right? It's a timing aspect of when you decide to go with these things. When you decide to invest in your automation, when you decide to build a good frequent release cycle. That is important. So the why not really helps you think about when should I do it. Don't do it too early is what we were sort of trying to say at the beginning. But then of course that doesn't mean that you stop ignoring it and become less responsible. You still do it at the time when it is still responsible.
I mean, it's like this, right? It's like taking insurance. I mean, if your insurance expires, sure, there's no mandate that you have to take insurance. I mean, not for vehicles, but say for life, right? So, but when you need it, you need it. Or health insurance for that matter, right? So, and you keep evaluating, okay, now I'm 30, now do I need it? Now I'm 35, now do I need it? Now I'm 40, now do I need it, right? So, maybe I need it at some point in time, right? A project is like that. Like when you're adding a lot of things without automation, when you're building a lot of things and it becomes complicated, at some point you need to be cognizant of the fact that, oh my God, this is like a house of cards. If I don't take care of it, it will fall, right? So I think that's the maturity where the when not is really about that. It's about that optimization where you are delaying it to the last responsible moment.
And with these two slides, we really hope that that emphasis on the why and why not takes precedence before jumping into the
So we thought the talk was for 30 minutes, and Jake and I had really hoped to breeze through this, but because the previous talk we finished early, and we also realized the talk was for 45 minutes, we spent 15 minutes on this. I hope you guys won't kill us because we didn't finish early or something. We are probably going to take till 12:45.
Maybe we could do it good on time.
Sure. Okay.
So let's move on.
So, just one question about
Sure.
the bit that you mentioned that customers don't really know what they want or what they need, right? And when we sort of try to factor that into how much automation we need to put in. So there is a bit of a catch-22 there. Is that since the customer doesn't know what they want or what would be most beneficial to them, it would be more beneficial if we can provide them a lot of options. With automation in place, we will be able to deliver those options faster, right?
But the cost of building that automation in the first place, so let's say you have 5 people, right? And you need 2 people to build that automation. Whereas initially maybe the options that you want may be more in terms of features. Like you need all the 5 people to work on 5 different features to see what sticks. Right? So you may be taking a lot of hit on trying to keep it stable and kind to oh, you forgot to restart the database server, things like that. You forgot to run the migrations, so the things are failing on prod. Basic stupid mistakes are generally what happens when you don't have automation, right? So things stop working. There are exceptions everywhere, and then you fix it, and it's done. But to go and fix it is the painful bit. Right. So we are assuming when your idea is still not validated, you're probably still very nascent and it's not very complex, and you would rather spend the time on building features than trying to build automation.
Yeah.
But that's a conscious decision though. I mean, if you think that having the automation will help you go faster, I mean, yeah, sure, invest there.
So I guess it's a trade-off of how trivial
Sure,
it is that
for sure, yeah.
And also that when we say the customer don't know what they want, we're not really talking about the requirement of the entire system itself. It's more into the details of how to go about delivering it. The problem statement itself is clear to the customer. They have decided to invest in this whole thing, and then you're talking about how to get to that, right? Like what are the features which will ideally get you to that, and that's when you need that automation and the quick cycle, so you can provide them with multiple options.
I mean,
right?
the automation itself could be let's take a simplified Rails app. There's a Rails app, so you might want to write that cap task. It's okay, but you may not want to do automatic provisioning. You may still be okay trying to going to Amazon Web Console and trying to do it via UI, because that's a less frequent task. You may have to do it once every day, right? Or whenever the load is up and everything is slow, then you go and add provision one more. Maybe those are the kind of decisions that we are talking about. The basics of the basics. Probably just write that shell script, write that cap task, write that whatever to get the basics up and running. Those things, don't even let it go to your business stakeholders. I mean, the way I say it is, if I have me and a dev and one more ops person, we'll just decide what is the fundamental, this is must have. Don't even let it bubble up to the stakeholders. Only when it requires more time and effort. Let's say a good thing would be, so I was working in a startup called Nutspot. And there, if a task took more than 2 hours, probably then we would take a call. If it is less than 2 hours, we'd probably just go ahead and do it without discussing it out. That's the kind of rule of thumb that we had. So, things like that, it's more contextual, but yeah.
In that sense, the whole automation aspect also, the time aspect tells you a lot about the automation. Is this project a year long? I mean, is the customer already willing to go for that long haul, right? Is the investment already done? Is the mindset already there? Or is it just a month? For sure, they don't want to carry on for longer, and it doesn't make sense. So yeah. And,
oh wait, how frequent is frequent?
yeah, it depends.
Sure.
Sure.
I mean, huh?
There is no generalized statement for this.
Sure. Okay, cool.
5 to 10 times a day.
5 to 10 times a day. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Hopefully it is.
Yeah.
It's based on the project. It depends on the project and the business goals. Like you're pointing
Yeah,
about
if you are
the
e-commerce,
e-commerce
yeah,
example.
but
You do
if you
really
are-
need it, and hopefully that's one of the biggest reasons.
If you're
Not the
building an
biggest
Eclipse
reason.
plugin,
If you have
probably.
5 to 10 times a day, I think then you can do it 20 times a day as well. If you have that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we are also thinking, what if you're an Eclipse plugin? I mean, do you want to like deploy 5 to 10? Then probably not.
Every check-in should go to production.
Sorry?
Every check-in should go to production.
What if it has a bug?
No, that is where the continuous integration comes, right?
Another
You should
check-in
do the testing and
But
all.
then, yeah, you would probably check in the fix.
Yes.
And then keep moving forward.
So the system automatically checks for the errors and it should roll back automatically.
Roll
Yeah, why
forward, probably.
Sure. But yeah, that hopefully is the primary goal.
I mean,
There
yeah,
is-
like,
it doesn't
so-
really matter. Is kind of
Yeah, like you
Also-
guys are a fairly mature audience, right? So, I mean, these are all slides from when we talk outside of DevOps context. So, yeah, 4 months or 2 days, both are equally valid. There's
the
no-
number is not really relevant
Yeah, exactly.
outside the context.
How
of
does
the
it matter if it's 4 months or 2 days, as long as everybody is happy, right? And you are making money and good things are happening.
Yeah, and the point here again, let it evolve. We're saying it doesn't have to be one thing that you keep going on, right? At the beginning of the project, you might start. In fact, that's exactly sort of what happened with us in a project. We went into production, we just arbitrarily decided let's do every week one push to production because we can do it, and then soon it started becoming a little cumbersome to keep on with it for whatever reason, right? There's probably not enough done in the automation or whatever it was, right? And then slowly we moved to a bi-weekly, and then we had a conversation with the customer. That's probably the important lesson here. Then we had the conversation with the customer, like, do you really want us to quickly push? And then we realized that they were not really that particularly worried about it, right? And then, but then because we've been doing it, they already started seeing the benefit of quickly seeing those features. They were very happy with it. So now it's just gone. I mean, we don't even talk about weekly or bi-weekly or whatever it is. We just push it whenever we are done with something. And we have our customer in that level of trust where they know that these guys will definitely put it out into production as soon as it's done. So it's no longer something we even talk about. It just happens, right? Everything is done, everything is looking good, it goes out into production. They know that it will go out into production.
And Martin Fowler would have said, give that man a cookie now, right? I mean, that's what people talk, right? It's very hard to hit this state, but where your customers are so aligned that, they say, okay, forget release plans, we will release when we are ready.
Yeah.
That's the dream, right?
Don't go in with any preconceived notions. Probably that might help. Just have the conversation with them. Let that happen over a period of a month or two. It's fine. But when you are at the point where you have that trust, it's awesome. Like these things don't. You're not talking about any of these things. Stuff is happening. You're building features. They're going out into production. The conversation is never focused on when is my next production going to come out. The conversation is then about what is that feature we are trying to build, or let's think about how we can do this better, or let's think about how we can do that better. So yeah, it pays to invest in that building of that trust cycle or that release cycle or whatever.
For lack of better word, continuous delivery.
Yeah, that's when.
Yeah, like do what makes sense, seriously. So.
Just do what makes sense. It might sound like a very easy answer. But you need to really think about it when in that context
Okay, so finally we get to the bit about what we wanted to talk about, how to go faster. TLDR, theory of constraints. So if you guys know what is theory of constraints, if you know how to apply it to a real world problem and break it down and solve it, then you don't need to listen to a lot of things that we are going to talk next. So that's essentially what even the whole lean and Kanban and a lot of these processes are based off of theory of constraints. So that's essentially the roots of how even the whole continuous delivery movement started, and right. So that's what we'll be talking about. These things that we are going to talk about, these are more things that will uncover problems. They are not as much as solutions. Like when you go to a chef's website, they talk very little about the problem and talk a lot about features, assuming you know what the problems are being solved, right? But these things are more focused on how to uncover those problems that you might have, right? Like if we all agree that going faster is a good thing, and we want to do it for whatever is the reason, and going faster doesn't need to be daily. It just means that going faster than where I am now, right? It's on a relative scale. I am at X and I want to go to Y, and how do I do it, right? If that is the thing that you want to solve, then these are the high-level points that we would want you to think about. And we applied this to all our projects, and we seem to be always, able to solve our going slow problem. So yeah. Like the first most the important thing that we think is critical chain.
So what is it? Let's talk about what the critical chain is.
Critical chain helps you identify bottlenecks. So what is critical chain? What is the time taken for you to deploy one line of code that is in your SEM to prod? Now, no shortcuts. Doing all the nice things and the right way to do it in your team, whatever is the practice. If you were to do it today, how long does it take? Right? I mean, you guys have one day and weekly people. I don't know if you started from there, but think about the times when. Go for example is a 6 or 7 year old code base. Lots of legacy, and we used to do like 4-month releases. And for us, 4-month, even internally, we used to do like 2 to 3 month releases. From there, we went to multiple production releases a day internally, and it's not hosted, it's not SaaS. My teammate Hari will be talking about the problems faced in non-SaaS world, right? So even in non-SaaS, we started hitting release when we are ready. So there is no release plan, right? So to be able to go there, we asked a lot of these questions. So think of all the problems that you hit, right? If you look at if you remember the first diagram that we showed, like the build, test, release chain, right? So if you were to draw a workflow like that, a graph like that for your team, that's when you'll be able to very clearly visualize what this critical chain is, where there are no shortcuts. And you'll just say, okay, a line of code got committed into this Git repository. I'm going to assume you guys are all on Git, otherwise I'm going to be very sad. From this Git repo, all the way till prod, how long does it take? Including all your manual testing effort, ops, overhead, whatever.
Eventually, when does the customer see that
right.
feature, right? And really think hard about it, because hopefully it's something you can actually put down in a single sequence of steps, and hopefully it's not all over the place like Pavan was saying, right? None of the hot fixes and none of the shortcuts.
We are assuming there's only
it's working on my machine, let me just push it to production.
Right, we are assuming there's only one path to prod. I mean, works on my machine is not and then git push to that is not to that remote is not an option, right? So there is a reason why we are it's a good idea to just do one path to prod, because it's so easy to optimize. Like one of the rules that we had early on, me and Jake and a few others, on Go, was it's okay to be wrong as long as you're consistently wrong. Right? So this is a very important thing that we realized. I mean, instead of trying to hit that perfect solution, just come up with one solution and just apply the same thing everywhere. If you are wrong, it's very easy to just go and fix everywhere, right? But when you have 4 or 5 different ways of doing something, it becomes even though it's just 4 or 5 things, in your head it's an NP hard problem. You're like, oh my god, that's traveling salesman, right? So it's not though, but that's how you start thinking. And that's what
and the worst aspect of it is it's not usually obvious when it's so scattered around, right?
You think it is so hard to fix it, let's not touch it, right? So instead what you would do, I'll just add one more way of one more shortcut to bypass this. Let me just fix this null pointer exception and push it to prod, because it's just a simple null pointer exception. Right? But why? I mean, that's where that shortcut will you are basically creating a new path for all your other followers to just go there. Yeah, maybe it made sense to you, but maybe it doesn't make sense to anybody else to do that. But they'll do it anyway, right? So that's what we realized. Be very, very anal a nickel around the fact that you have to have only one way of deploying to prod. But that does not mean that your workflow before prod is not very complex, right? For example, if you want to promote something to staging, and let's say it's a simple documentation fix, would you want it to go through your entire process? Probably not. You just want to just push it to staging, see that it works on staging, and push it to prod, right? So, the whole idea here is what goes to prod is audited, but like monitored properly. But you can take like different kinds of paths to go to prod. Like, why is this important? We'll talk about. We can take this offline. We can use a diagram and just like write it on hand, on a paper, and just talk about it. Because really like just visualizing that and trying to figure out where our bottlenecks were the easiest way for us to go faster.
A simple example for staging, let's say, prod is an environment, staging is a different environment, right? And the question was when we started writing our code, checking it, and we want to see it on staging. Then we have all our unit tests running, then all our acceptance tests running, smoke tests running. Oh my God, I'm like waiting for it forever to get to that. And then I started identifying these things. Do I really care about these performance tests? Do I really care about these whatever acceptance tests? Do I? So what we then figured out is, let's just do the smoke tests and see the feature out there, right? Because what that meant is, it's not that we stopped doing the other things. They started happening parallelly, and then they come back with a notification saying, did something go wrong, right? The idea was, again, take this chain and then make it smaller and smaller, so that you kind of are in the right balance of the trade-off between how much right you are versus how fast you get there.
I mean, it's it's like this, right? If you're dumb, I'll give you a list of I'll give you a checklist, and you just need to follow it, right? But if you're smart, you'll take the checklist, you'll remember that, you'll understand why each point in the checklist was there in the checklist in the first place, and then take a conscious call on, should I do this or not, right? Dumb but smart may be a little extreme, but like really think about this, right? You don't need to follow any checklist. Everything is there for a reason. But it's like Matrix, right? Some rules can be bent, other rules can be broken. There is no spoon, right? It is literally like that. So yeah, that's where that's exactly what Jake is saying. Like, if this does not need to go through hundreds of tests and can directly go to staging, then why is it not going to staging? Why is it even going through all those things? And just because there is a process, should you be doing it? No. Probably not, right?
And definitely not because you read about it somewhere or whatever. Do what makes sense. Do what makes sense to you, really.
Yeah.
Fail fast.
Second thing, fail fast, learn fast. Failure is great, especially after coming out of a failed startup. I really think I am a more knowledgeable person now. It's amazing how failure is like a manager would come and yell at you because something is not working. I don't know if you guys are from large organization. I don't know the demographic of people here. If you are from a large organization, I used to work for one, and people are literally scared of their managers and of going wrong. And if a QA raises a bug, there's such a big fight between a QA and a dev saying, that's not because of my fault, you did something wrong. Like, there's such a huge blame game going on. And this whole thing, it's stemming from one fact, that they don't want to fail. Like, that happen again. Because we know there's a way that a bug can go into prod. I will never make that mistake again, right? Again, the same smart thing, right? Failing doesn't mean you fail the same way again and again. Failing means you fail differently every time, so that you learn about different things, right? A smoke build failed, big deal, I'll fix it, I'll check it again, right? Your customer asked you to redo a feature. Awesome, my customer didn't know what he wanted, now he knows what he wants, and now I'm going to do it. Yes, we wasted 1 month, okay fine, we wasted a month, but now the customer also knows that he paid for a month's work, and he had to redo it, right? So these things all eventually pan out. But there is no need for us to not fail. In fact, we would want to fail.
Look at all these things as feedback, right?
Exactly, they are all telling you something.
It's telling you something. Go ahead and try to fix it. Go ahead and try to move forward, and not do it in the first place. Because if you don't do it, you'll never know that there was something wrong with it.
In fact, failing is great, so great that you want to do it really fast, right? And a related
as
thing,
a result of the fear of failure, right?
right?
That's what happens.
People at gates, a QA, like at least I've seen QAs whose life mission is to sit on a build forever. Oh, I want to. I'm sure there's a bug here. I want to find it. Oh, I need 2 more days to sign it off. I need 3 more days to sign it off. How many of you have worked with such a QA team where your builds are just not going forward? And the problem is not with the QA. The problem is with the mindset and the culture. The mindset is they are gates. They think that they are gates for quality, right? But what we think is there should be a slight change in the mindset where they should think of it as they are here to push everything forward. Everybody's job in life on a software project should be to make sure that that line of code is in prod, right? I am a QA. I should be smart about how I am testing it. If I know that there is no way this is going to impact that other thing, I will push it. If there is a problem, now I know, oh shit, I was wrong. Okay, I can be wrong. Now I know that there is a connection between this feature and that feature, right? So it's all about that, right? We have this video that we got from one of our old customers from ancestry.com. We'll just play it. I don't know if the audio will be audible, but yeah, if it's not, I'll just summarize what he's talking about.
And what happened is that when we made the announcement it was going to happen, or we opened up to the public, we started having bugs in their stack. And instead of saying, hey, we got a problem, let's go immediately make changes directly in prod, it was so fast that they went and made changes, checked it in, immediately Go kicked off, and compiled and deployed to the integration environments. They found bugs, they started over again, found another bug, started over again, and then they got into our acceptance environment. And we found a problem, they went right back again. And they did this iteration. They failed really, really fast and were able to find the bugs as fast as possible. So they did about, when I looked at the logs, they did about, for every 15 deploys to the integration environment, which is our kind of our dev, they would get 1 actually on prod. And during 1 day, they were able to get the code out to production about 5 times to be able to fix minor and major problems. But it took about 40 attempts, or 40 fast fails, if we want to use that term, to be able to get those 5 good production pushes.
I mean, this really goes back to the concept of every check-in goes to prod, right? Assume that every check-in will make it to prod, but then most check-ins won't. On their journey to prod, at some point they fail, and then you go all the way back. You make a check-in. They go forward, you go back. They go forward, you go back, and you keep doing this attempt until it goes to prod. Cool. The next step. Rinse and repeat, right? You keep doing this, and in a day you do 40 check-ins, maybe there are 5 production deployments. And this is perfect. I mean, they have their code base is huge, and they have about 200 developers checking in, and they have a QA team of about 50 people, and they do 5 production deploys a day. It's about some 20 million lines of code about 2 years back when we did this video. So for us, that was the thing. That was oh my god, it's perfect. I mean, the way they are doing it is the right way to do it, right? So
and when you talk about such fast deploy cycles to production, right? That's when this sort of starts becoming relevant. Now, I'm sure you all heard less is more, right? We want to talk about less becomes more. How does that happen? 3 months of work. Think of all of these as features that you had to that you had decided upon, and you built it, and then you took it to the customer after 3 months. And then they're not happy because those gray ones, right? They probably are not happy with those. They didn't want it in the first place. I'm sure a lot of you have faced that, right? When you go back to your customer after a while, and then with a done product, they may not always be happy with everything.
Change request.
They want to change things again and again, right? Consider this. We break it down. We break it down into 3 weeks of 3 iterations, 2 weeks each, right? We are cutting down how quickly we go into production. Let's say we build this feature. Sorry. Yep. You build something, they're happy, they see it, they're happy with that small bit, and then as a part of the discussion you realize that you don't need those other 2 things, right? And you don't do it, right? Next time, again, you do one more, second iteration, you do one more feature, and then you discover that you don't need that other bit. Now they are happy. Now they're getting used to the idea of you doing something and then realizing there's a lot of other things which are not required. They are happy now that you're actually saving the money by not doing other things, and they are a part of it.
Like there are two things here, right? They are seeing things in like action really fast, and they're also realizing they don't need a lot of things that they initially thought they need. So,
and then you do more of it in the third iteration, and you have them more happier by doing lesser number of features.
Like in 6 weeks, probably you finished whatever you were supposed to do in 3 months, and your customer was actually happy throughout the whole thing. And like this is where I think when you have a code base which hasn't been deployed for a year, right? Like probably the first thing to do is forget automation, forget everything. Deploy to prod, make your customers to get them to use it, or get them to give it to their customers, right? Like until end users actually use it, you are just building based on a bunch of assumptions. Right? And at the end of it, maybe a lot of grace would be there in your 1 year's worth of work, and they'll be very sad, right? So yeah, like this is what going fast does not mean you are burning yourself out. It does not mean taking the 3 months worth of scope and delivering it in 6 weeks, right? It just means that you break it down, so like prioritize, break it down, like the usual things, right? It just means that you are working smarter, not that you are working more.
Going back to that video, that's what you're trying to say there, right? They were going really fast. That does not mean, again, they were delivering a lot more features.
Probably each of their commits had just 4 lines or 5 lines of changes, right? Just fix just enough and just push. Fix just enough and just push. Because their feedback mechanism is so good that they'll know when the things are not right. Right?
When we keep using the term fast, definitely don't try to work over and work weekends and try to make more stuff go into production. That's probably not going to be helping. This becomes very critical when you try to do something like what we showed in the slide before. That breaking down so that you can identify the bits that are not important, very important, very important. Again, going back to the video example, the more the number of iterations, the finer the feedback, right? The example he talked about, they were trying to hit 40 or whatever staging pushes, which ended up in 5 production pushes, because those were the ones which actually identified the problem and fixed it. Try to do more of them, finer the feedback, and then the course correction, right? Like you want to make sure that you're constantly correcting the direction in which you're going with a feature. And it's all about correcting that course quickly and rapidly. Yep. This becomes really important when you're talking about going to the customer and saying, okay, we are done with this bit. Are you happy with it? Right?
So like it's like this, right? So your customer wants you to do 5 tasks. Am I audible?
I think you can drop the mic.
Yeah. So let's say you have 5 tasks to do.
You're done.
We're done?
Well, then, yeah, we're all done.
Can we continue?
Yes.
Is that fine?
Just allow.
Cool. Thanks. You have 5 tasks to do, and you want to do all the 5 tasks and then go back to your customer. Who decides how much is enough? I mean, will you know what is required to be done, or how do you know that you have done what you're supposed to have do?
Deciding that, I'm happy with this.
I don't know. It's okay.
Let's say you're building a feature. That's it. We are done with this feature. We don't need to do anything more to make this better.
Probably the example. So we think that enough is in the eye of the stakeholder. I mean, don't try to get into the heads of your stakeholder and say, okay, now this is probably what they want, right? There is no need for that. Instead, just ask them, hey, is this what you want, right? Like a simple example. I don't know, as a kid, were you supposed to keep your room clean? Right? If you were supposed to keep your room clean, how long did you take? Did you take 40 minutes? Or did you take like 2 hours? Did you spend an entire day trying to clean your room? How long did you spend? 2-3 days. Okay. So, my friend, a friend of ours, Mark Chang, he wrote up this really nice blog about like when he was a kid. And his thing was, my strategy was to do just enough work and then pull my mom in so that she could pass or fail my room's tidiness. It's brilliant. I mean, he was like, dude, I would just do enough I would just put all my toys under my bed and I would say, Mom, I'm done, I'm going to play, and then she would come in and you would like, what the hell, this is not how you do it. And then you would have to like arrange all his toys, and he spoke about how like instead of trying to do a mega one-day cleanup, I would probably like do just enough. Like sometimes my mom would be in a good mood and she would let me off immediately. Sometimes she would make me do a lot. But every time I would actually try to get her and ask her, is it fine? And it had a, like in his case, a slight spin. He was like, sometimes my mom would be annoyed so much that I would get her every time that she would just say, fine, just get lost. Right? And then you just go. But that's a good thing, right? As a kid, you want to spend more time in the ground than at the house cleaning. I mean, that's like a classic example for us to fail fast.
So really don't think about how long it is going to take.
Exactly.
That doesn't really matter. Does it really matter? Did his mother really care about how long he took to do it?
Right? Really. So it's more like, okay, he failed fast. He got his mom many times, got yelled at, which was fine. But it had a good thing eventually where he got let off earlier, probably. Right? So, yeah, like it encompasses like both the enough is enough and fail fast.
Yeah, this is what I think sort of came up as a question, and there's some laughter about it as well. You know, things keep going into production. Oh, what if production fails? What if that's wrong? Then he spoke about how you can go and fix it quickly. But you did break it in the first place. Somebody's going to be annoyed. Are they going to be annoyed? Right?
Okay, how many of you think this statement is wrong? I'll read it out. Most customers don't care about prod issues. Okay. What if I tell you they care more about turnaround time on fixing issues? And
about the repercussions of the breakages, not really the breakages, right? As long as you can fix it, as long as it doesn't hurt their business, they're okay with it. Like the real point is in you understanding what is their real concerns there, right? Have that conversation. It's very important. Don't not do it at all.
Oh, like this is, it saves you so much time by, so this is where the trust building and the whole consulting angle comes into picture, right? Like this works very differently for products, but even products have a list of known issues and things like that, right? And they do patch fixes, bug fix releases. So there is always a way for you to, make your customer happy. Like they are humans, right? I mean, unless you are selling it to, I don't know. So,
do not have that conversation. Do not decide that yourself, right? Let's say there are 3 things which are breaking. Have a conversation with the customer. See if they're okay with the feature that you've built, which might be more important to them than what's breaking, right? It's really important for them to make that decision. And in a lot of times you might be surprised that they're okay with it as long as you tell them, actually, there are these 3 problems. I'll put this out in my release notes. I know that these are.
It's about honesty, right? Like if you're honest about it and tell them, hey, we know of these three issues, but at the same time you have these other 4 features that are going out. My guess is they'll be okay as long as you're honest about it, and as long as you're not sloppy. I mean, like it's all about that thing, right? If they think, oh my god, my like login is broken, probably they'll not be okay with that. Right, like, but then maybe there's a small CSS issue, but your UI guy is busy somewhere else. Would you not release that? I don't know, maybe you will. Like that's a conversation you would probably need to have. Where not all bugs are of same things, right? Like data corruption issue, yeah, that's a big deal, don't do that, right? But most other things, maybe you can do that. But it's not your call, it's your customer's call, and make sure you have that conversation.
Adding gates to prevent it, again we spoke about that before. Don't not do it, again, don't think of it as a gate, change that mindset.
Because like gates, right, it's like this, you have a big list of issues, last point. Sorry, go. You have a software, you have lots of bugs, your gate will uncover only like a few bugs, right? There are lots of other bugs which you don't know about. Who are you kidding? Like if you think your software is perfect and there are no bugs, I mean, I would want to work with you. But, right, teach me master, right? So, but it's just lame to add gates and stop software from going forward. Audit, don't restrict.
That's always there. You can always make sure that you know what's happening and be aware of it, rather than not doing it at all because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right, I mean, if you are afraid that somebody will ruin everything, just make sure that who's the person who ruined everything and probably restrict his access or her access, right?
And with that, we are
rm minus rf sudo. Yeah, see who did that.
so yeah, hopefully now that makes sense. Holier than thou.
Probably.
Don't be afraid of it. Let that not be.
Don't fear. Yeah, recap. Critical chain, fail fast, learn fast. Less can be more. Enough is enough. And production probably not holier than thou. Production probably not holier than thou. It doesn't seem so obvious in the big list of things. But then we are more. It's just one example of how you can start having bottlenecks in your chain. Like production being one of them. There could be a test environment.
So enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Yeah.
And then.
Yeah, we don't know about you, but. This time it's going.
And yeah, hopefully we can continue the conversation.